We're here today at the brilliant National Museum for the Royal Navy in Hartlepool, home of the HMS Trincomalee. That's the oldest warship afloat in the whole of England, to interview Hartlepool's newest Member of Parliament, Mike Hill. Come on, let's go. Mike, welcome, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to the viewers at Hartlepool TV.
No problem.
Now, you dedicated your win to your father.
Yeah.
What influence was he in your life?
My dad, who died in February, he was 80 years old, was what we consider to be a grafter all his life. He worked solidly from leaving school all the way up until he was practically forced to retire by my mother. I remember there was a very good story about his mother telling him, now lad, you have to work until you're 65. That's the law. And on the day of his 65th birthday, that's literally what he did. He stopped working.
Wow.
And so that and the principles and the values that he had. He was a very, very nice man. He was a passive gentleman, a peacemaker. He was known for sorting problems out, sorting troubles out. And in a sense, you know, my career prior to being an MP was all about sorting people's problems out. I was a full-time trade union official. So, so there's the influence in that, yeah. And so I've got very, very happy memories, but of course he'd have loved to have seen me win an election, and he would have been proud of that. So
I'm absolutely certain he would, no question about it. Surprised a little bit lack of information about you on the internet when we were doing our research.
Yeah.
Some people are curious about a couple of things. Can I just run a couple of snap questions to you?
Yeah.
Your schools you attended in your education?
Well, all that's being updated as we speak. As you can imagine, as a new MP, you get inundated with everything. Hundreds of thousands of emails. Some of them are asking for the kind of information that you're asking for now. And in fact, I had to phone one up only last week to make doubly sure that they were bona fide. They said they were from the Daily Times, and I needed to check that out. So happy to tell you all of this now. So school.
So we'll wait till it comes out?
No, sorry,
okay.
no. I went to a school called Sutherland High School in Hayward, Lancashire.
Right.
And from then on, I went to City of Liverpool College of Higher Education, which was a lovely place and an annex of Lancaster University. So I've actually got a degree from Lancaster University.
Wow.
So there you go. But all of that's been updated.
Okay. Have you held any other employment positions before the one at Unison?
Yeah, I worked in local government. I started off, prior to going to university, I did a lot of different jobs. I was a window cleaner, for example. I cleaned seashells, for example, or before I went to university. But after university, I ended up working in the library service. So I was employed as a library assistant in the borough of Rochdale.
Oh, Rochdale.
In Rochdale.
Wow.
Yeah, which is, I started off my career in libraries in Hayward Library, which is part of Rochdale.
Right. Next question, and you're going to have to be careful here, Mike.
Yeah.
Which soccer team do you support?
Hartlepool United, naturally.
Good man.
Used to be known as the Fools, but Hartlepool. And they will get back up into the league. They will.
They
will. They will. I'm absolutely
sure. They will. I'm absolutely confident.
There's an absolute confidence about the place. The fans are lovely.
Oh, fans are brilliant.
I was there in the final match, and it was so disappointing.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Oh.
It was so heartbreaking, so disappointing when the result came through that we didn't want, because the players played their socks off. The fans were fantastic.
They did, and we got the right result.
We got the right result. It's just that we got the wrong result elsewhere.
Elsewhere, I know. That was a day, wasn't it? Oh, it really was. Now you attended your first session in Westminster.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
Well, it's nearly over and done with. We've still got another week to go yet.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's bewildering to a degree.
Right.
Full on is another phrase that you might want to use. Like Hogwarts is a common phrase that a lot of the MPs use. They literally do. It is like Hogwarts. It is the place is so historic, gothic. A lot of the procedures and protocols are ancient. You know, for working class people, it's coming into that place. It really is almost Kafkaesque,
Yeah.
in a sense,
Yeah.
and in another sense as well, that you have to, by and large, find your own feet on many things. There's lots of things going on and lots of things coming at you. All of the stuff about procedures, all of the stuff about what you need to do, set up an office, what you need to do to vote and speak, and this and that, and it all comes full on. But you do find your feet eventually. And I think some say actually you never actually properly get used to the place.
The whole thing.
Yeah. In terms of navigating around it, and I can understand that. It's huge.
Yeah. Well, some people, some MPs don't get an office for a while. Have you got an office?
Yeah, we've established an office of sorts. I've got a couple of caseworkers, an office manager. We're getting bits and pieces together. We've had our first surgery, which was a planned surgery. So if people wanted to come to the surgery, they'd have to get in touch with the office in the first instance. That's so we can actually order things and deal with issues and properly. And that was good. That was held over at the Civic Centre yesterday morning. But we do have a functional office. We're knitting things together. We're responding to people. We're looking at the emails, and we've actually now got our own office paper as well. So that's good news.
That's definitely good news. Obviously, you're in Westminster at a very key time.
Yeah.
On Thursday, the government issued its European Union Great Repeal Bill. Within hours of that 66-page document being issued, the shadow Brexit negotiator Keir Starmer and Jeremy Corbyn came out against large portions of it.
Yeah.
Now, difficult position for you, because given that 70% of the people in Hartlepool voted for Brexit, will Labour deny us our Brexit?
No, because I mean, I'm an MP that is on record as wanting to remain in the EU,
Yes.
as many other Labour MPs were at the time. But I'm also an MP that's on record as saying that I fully accept the mandate of the town. And the mandate was overwhelming for Brexit, 70%. And that is my mandate. I am the MP for Hartlepool, and therefore we're out. That's where we're going.
Great.
What I'm cautious about, because I have a trade union background, is negotiating a proper, I hate to use the word Brexit, but the word is Brexit, a proper Brexit. It's all right coming out with sound bites. Such as hard or soft Brexit. I don't buy into any of those models, because to quantify any of those things, you need to have a model, and that's what I'm all about. In my old job, I used to negotiate. I want to see what I'm negotiating. I want to put the checks and balances in there that set the stall out, and that's how I see the Labour Party's position. What the Labour Party is trying to do, in effect, and I think they've used the phrase, haven't they, a Brexit for jobs. In effect, it's putting those controls and checks and balances in place so that people don't lose employment as a consequence, that jobs don't go as a consequence, that businesses don't run and businesses survive and thrive and have a way of thriving, that we don't hit an economic floor as a consequence. So in other words, it's protections as we come out. It's not pushing back. It's bringing it out gradually so that we can negotiate something that will be for the benefit of the UK.
But obviously the clock's running now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, by the time the government's tried to placate Labour and the Welsh and the Irish and Scots, how are they going to do that? I mean, how are you all going to say, look, all right, we've amended it enough and this is it.
Well, Theresa May has changed tack, hasn't she? She's now saying let's have cross-party consensus on things. Let's work together, which is fine if it wasn't the fact that it was said by a Westminster politician who's just, done a deal with the DUP for 10 billion quid. What you've got to look at is things like the issue that just flared up early this week on Euratom. Nobody had heard of it. What's this Euratom thing? Why are they having a Westminster debate on this? Transpired it was in a detailed but important element to our cooperation with other EU countries. It was all about the transport and trade of radioactive materials that this country requires for, in my local interest, for health reasons, for healthcare reasons, radioisotopes, stuff like that. Very, very important.
Yeah, because you have quite an extensive national health background, don't you?
Well, as a campaigner, but at the end of the day, it's things like that where people wouldn't even know what's going on. All of a sudden, why is this important? Yeah. Oh, because it's so important to our health. So that's why I'm interested in the detail of Brexit. That's why it's so important that we pick up on these issues so that they don't flare up like they did earlier on this week and became a huge issue, so that they're negotiated in a measured way.
I know. How can the government placate everybody with all these details? Because there's so many of them, isn't there?
They can't. It's massive. It's a huge task. I think they'll find it very, very difficult to placate.
But will there be a time when Labour says, look, we can't hammer this out anymore. The clock's running down. Let's get Brexit going.
There possibly will be that time, because let's say, for example, if we're putting forward common sense amendments, I don't know what any of the amendments will be, but there will be amendments to whatever the government proposes on the Great Repeal Bill. Naturally so, because we'll want to get our checks and balances in there. If they manage to kick back all the time, and it's clear that the agenda is something that the Labour Party is not comfortable with, then as long as our agenda remains Brexit, which under Keir Starmer it certainly is, then there might be a time when we have to step forward and move forward and try and forcefully challenge that. If you're talking about us forming a minority government by hooking up with another party, there's not been any discussion of that at all. There's not been. If there's a vote of no confidence, is that likely to be
Well, I have heard that you're keeping October free.
Well, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn is a very busy man. He has been over the last month. He's gone into so many touring marginals, and he intends to do a lot more of the same.
Yeah, I think he does. Can you reassure viewers of what, by far and away, is the most two crucial issues? Unfettered immigration and coming out of the single market so we can trade with the rest of the world. Right. What can you give an assurance that you will keep those two things as sacrosanct?
Well, first of all, I voted on a Labour amendment that sought to match the single market, as opposed to the other amendment, the Rebel amendment, that said that we must absolutely carry on being part of it. Yeah. So I naturally see that there's a flow where we need to be as close as we possibly can do, so we don't burn our bridges. But of course, we need to venture outwards, and do new trade deals that way. On the matter of immigration, it's always been on record with me that I recognise that there's an employment issue that goes with immigration and migration. And I've always looked at it from a pragmatic perspective, that free movement to me is very important, but regulated movement of the workforce is even more important as well, because what we're hearing at the moment are a lot of noises off. I don't know whether you've picked up on it, but there's a lot of business people, not necessarily, I'm not talking from a Hartlepool perspective, but we have heard businesses now saying, our business won't thrive if everybody has to go back home, if we can't have free movement of labour.
And nobody's sort of advocating that, though, are they? Really?
No, and nobody's advocating that, because that would be the wrong thing. But
Exactly.
controlled movement of the workforce benefits our own businesses, but it also benefits our own people, because that means that they can carry on working in EU countries as well. And
well, yeah, but I think what people are objecting to is, like, the statistics came out a couple of months ago, and it was over 500,000 in 1 year. Now that's 5 towns the size of Hartlepool.
Yeah.
We cannot do that year after year, can we?
The Labour Party's not making any false promises. Like, I think Theresa May's now given up on on setting the quota for her party, because I think it's something that you can't fix immediately, but you've got to aspire to. As long as you keep those common sense checks and balances in mind, and as long as you focus on how you can regulate movement, then I think you've got to be honest, and you've got to say, let's put those components together and put it into practice, and let's start going forward, and let's not start promising huge figures, and let's look at it from a pragmatic perspective. Yeah.
Is there anything wrong with saying, look, we don't need any more of this profession, but we need a lot of doctors, let's bring all those in, and cherry picking the kind of people that we want in the country? Is there anything wrong with that particularly?
Is that the Australian points-based system?
Well,
something similar to that.
Yeah. Would you be for that?
If it works, and it appears to work for Australia, it appears to work for New Zealand, I think, is another place. If it works, it deserves to be looked at.
Right.
Because I tell you what, that conversation has been a conversation not of recent years. It's not just a Brexit conversation. It's one that's been going on for decades.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
It really has. And it's one that nobody's ever shown me details of where it works or it doesn't work. There is a negative side to what we see going on in places like Australia, and that is for people who are trying to get into the country as illegal immigrants. I think that holding them all on some island or atoll is something that I wouldn't sign up to.
No,
but I mean, equally so, we've got to get serious about that issue, because the poor souls that are coming over the water from Africa and landing in Greece and Italy, and how that. And when I say poor souls, I mean literally, they're sinking in boats, aren't they? As they come over and things like that. There's a lot of deaths. That's got to be tackled in a proper way as well.
Yeah. I think even if all the world gets together and creates safe places in their own countries, might be.
But how do we do it? Yeah, and we are a small country, but how do we do it in the British way? In the kind and caring way. Yeah. And not the callous way.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. Let me just hop on subjects, Mike. You've just been campaigning.
Yeah.
Number one issue, especially in Hartlepool, as you go around the doors, is the lack of hospital and hospital services.
Yes.
Now, given that our award-winning Hartlepool Hospital was closed under a Labour government with a Labour MP, your predecessor, and a local Labour council, realistically, what chance have you got to bring back even emergency services would help at the moment?
Well, start off with one question. When you say closed, what do you mean by closed?
Well, there's no ER.
You mean, right, so you don't literally mean that the hospital's closed down, because it isn't. It's a thriving hospital.
Well, only parts of it. There's not all the geriatrics and everything else that there used to be.
No, I get that point. I understand that there's been a lot of drift of services. There's been a loss of services.
Huge.
There's been a huge loss of A&E, which was unacceptable. When Children's went first, that should have been fought for a start off.
Obviously lost fertility now, and
then the adults
it's going down, isn't it?
And now there's an urgent care centre in there, which is not an A&E, the fertility unit, which I fought hard over, that is a shadow of the service that it was because basically the laboratory's going to go and all of that. Yes, there are minor surgeries going on. The surgery being brought back into the place, but now we're looking at the possibility of the birthing unit going.
Yeah.
It's
Well, how
absolutely.
can you stop that? How can you, as our new MP, stop that?
By doing all I can and what I do naturally, because I was a campaigner, I still am a campaigner, sorry, on health. So I've seen a lot of the stuff that goes on that we've been able to try and resolve, such as the movement of staff, the unnecessary movement of staff at times over to the Stockton sides, over to North Tees, and community care services in particular. So what I aim to do is to try and have a conversation to get as much stuff back into Holdsworth Road.
But with whom?
With the CCG. With the NHS Trust, obviously, and at government level through discussions over the Better Health Programme and the transformation plans. I mean, that's a nightmare for everybody at the end of the day. And also, I've been talking locally with our neighbouring MP. So that our neighbouring MPs actually, Phil Wilson for Sedgefield and Graham Morris for Easington, about working together, because that hospital services, Easington in particular, and that's the important link for me, because politically, especially when we had James Wharton in Stockton South as a Tory, it was literally, if you want to do the numbers game, it was one MP for Hartlepool versus 2 MPs for Stockton. Now, when we're looking at the sustainability and transformation plans, what we're looking at is a potential free-for-all, not only amongst MPs and local politicians, but communities, because we know that under those current proposals, the A&E at North Tees is under threat.
Well, this is it, because we worked out the other day that if you live in the north of Hartlepool, when they close North Tees, you'd be easier going to the A&E in Durham than you would. You've
got all sorts of very wrong scenarios,
totally
wrong scenarios, and I am absolutely upset and deeply concerned, for example, that we're rapidly coming to a point where if you're born in Hartlepool, the chances are that you won't be able to register your birthplace as being
you won't.
Hartlepool. Now, that, for me, coming from a traditional communities, working class communities, I know how important it is, and actually coming from a libraries background, I worked in local studies, I know just how important and significant it is, particularly for Hartlepool people, to have that town on their birth certificate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And equally so on their death certificates as well. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And you strip that out, you strip out people's, not only their identity, but their historic record as well. And so from that perspective, it makes me mad and makes me want to campaign more about defending Holdsworth Road, but not only just that place, which I have actually called the Alamo. I did on the election campaign say we should rename it the Alamo.
The Alamo, yeah, we should.
And surround it with people and don't let them do any damage to it. So, and so for an example there is, I'm looking very seriously at the proposals to possibly build houses on the land.
I know, but how can this happen?
Well, I mean,
I'm glad you share the absolute desperation people have about this issue. And you're absolutely right about the birth certificates, because one of the areas of grave concern is midwifery, and we don't have the midwives.
Precisely.
So even if you wanted a home birth, chances are you're not going to get it, because we don't have that.
But it's how those. I mean, it's how it's being approached as a service. How can we build those things back? And we don't have the midwives at the moment, but the midwives are out there. We don't have the specialist people just in case there's an urgent issue, because they're over at North Tees, right? So how does that happen? Why can't we have that service in Hartlepool? And how has those numbers of births in Hartlepool radically come down to figures of under 10? Well, we need to look at how the trust approaches that subject matter. Because if you're a mother and you have one hint, for example, or that there might be something wrong in the birth, and that the safest place to go to would be North Tees, then as a mother, particularly new mothers, you go to North Tees.
Yeah.
And so it's how that is addressed.
Everything comes back to this trust. I mean, how have they got such power to do this? I mean, and get away with it when it affects so many people detrimentally?
I think you're absolutely right. If you're with me on this one, the governance of NHS Foundation Trust needs to be looked at. And I know that
Totally.
I know that there's Labour historically in the mix on that.
Yes.
But when you look at the governance and the autonomous of it, that's the wrong word, isn't it? Autonomous, whatever.
Autonomy, yeah.
Autonomy.
We know what you mean.
Autonomy.
We know what you mean.
At the end of the day, our North East Ambulance Service is a foundation trust. Our North East and Hartlepool NHS Foundation is a foundation trust. So what's going wrong? And then when you link them with the sustainability and transformation plans and look at who's leading them, look who the leadership of those massive sea changes are, then they're all intertwined and interlinked. And then when you look at the NHS as a whole throughout the UK, so it's a massive bureaucratic animal beast. It needs to be looked at.
Well, how do you get onto an NHS trust?
Well,
is it an appointment or?
No, they're advertised, aren't they? They are, as far as I know, they're advertised in the local paper. I mean, people wanting to or turn up at the AGM, but they are supposed to be elected positions. Well, I mean, apart from the appointed positions, there are appointed positions.
I'm so pleased to see that the empathy that you have with the people here, because I mean, even now there's another 3 surgeries gone, and people are just saying, what is happening to our town?
Yeah. It's disappearing down the plug hole, and that's not what I want to happen to this town, and that's not what I campaigned about. I campaigned about rebuilding communities, but getting that cohesive strength together to fight things like the demise of our health service, to fight for things like another thing that annoys me, but is getting better, is on the social care front, the health and social care front, intrinsically linked, is that people who come out of hospital quite often, because of a lack of beds in the town, in the homes in the town, quite often are billeted outside of Hartlepool with a promise that the first place that comes up is, it's theirs. They can move back in. Well, they should be looked after in their communities.
Yes,
they should be come out of hospital and into their own communities, so that they can be looked after by their own relatives and by their own communities. Rebuild the communities, and so there's a big issue there for me on how we can better control and resource that kind of adult and children's healthcare, but that kind of community healthcare, but also further than that, because I know it's down the wire, because years and years ago I was very heavily involved in campaigning in respite care. So I know that further down the line there will be the issue of dementia care.
Yeah, well, because every 3 minutes is it someone.
Well, precisely, and don't you think that that's under-resourced, that there's not enough care facilities, there's not enough money going in, and don't you think, because it's a growing problem, there will be money coming in? So why can't that money come into the public services and be controlled properly, and we can have better facilities for our own people?
Maybe more money after Brexit.
10 million quid's gone to the DUP.
Right.
Well, there's 10 million quid gone.
I'm conscious of your time. We're going to have to move on, although I could talk to you for ages just about this one subject. You recently spoke out about the local council's 31% increase in allowances.
Yeah.
So happy that you did. Why do you think they did that?
It's never a right time, is it, to have to consider report findings of an independent body that's set up to actually look at council allowances. It's never a right time for allowances to be looked at, particularly from my perspective, when there's clearly austerity agenda.
Yeah.
There's clearly massive cuts to local authority services, millions of pounds worth, and there's clearly a pay cap for public sector workers,
Right.
1%, and it has been for years.
Yeah.
And my opinion is that councillors need to be, and are, to be fair to them, acutely aware of the pressures that are on their own workforce over pay, and the NHS workers similarly on 1%, and they do understand that. But the recommendation itself, and although when you actually break it, when you look at the figures and you break it down and you compare what the recommendation was with other local authorities, such as Easington, for example, you'll actually find that the figures proposed for a councillor that doesn't have a chair of a committee, doesn't do anything like anything extra on the police authority, the figures were pretty low.
Yeah.
The outcome was low, and remains low compared to other authorities.
Yeah.
But it's the percentage
that
really struck home.
Oh yeah.
Because it was, it was something that to me said, while we're arguing and putting amendments through that the government are knocking back in there, they're praising the firefighters and they're praising the health workers on the one hand over the tragic Grenfell Tower incident and all the terrorist attacks. Well, they're singing the praise of the public workers. They're still not prepared to lift that pay cap.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's not forget there are various pay review bodies that meet and come out with recommendations. So
it was just the wrong thing at the wrong time, wasn't it? Really?
It was the wrong thing at the wrong time, and sometimes parliamentarians, unfortunately, are expected to say what they've got to say because they speak for the town and in Parliament. And from my point of view, it was something that had to be said. And as far as I'm concerned, we've moved forward from that now and move forward in a positive light. So.
Yeah, okay. One last question, Mike. Imagine 4 years down the road, in the future, what would needed to have happened for you to look back on your first term and say, yes, it's a success?
For the hospital not to close, obviously, and for jobs to start being developed in the town, to come into the town, proper jobs. Saving jobs is good. The two pipe mills, saving jobs is really good. Watching wonderful big oil rigs coming in for dismantling is great, but let's get those jobs up for young people. It's important. And for all those poor lost souls that I saw when I knocked on doors, who were skilled people, who were out of work, who could actually really do a lot of work around the Teesside area and Hartlepool, where at the moment there are issues around who actually does those jobs. And I've been open and honest and had conversations with people about the need to look at the use of agency workers, for example.
Right.
And how they potentially undercut not only pay, but national terms and conditions of service as well, which is part of the subtle argument.
Yeah, because you've seconded a bill along those lines recently.
Yeah. And also, why aren't those jobs going to local people?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's looking at that. It's looking at apprenticeships, because although there's the apprenticeship levy, not a lot of people seem to have understood or bought into the fact that if they're paying money in, and they have to do because they're a big enough organisation, why aren't they running proper apprenticeships? So that's another one. And also the other thing is, as a marker, would be, I am absolutely horrified that life expectancy for women in Hartlepool is the second lowest in the UK. What a wonderful place. We've got, what an amazing town.
Yeah.
What a great offer we've got here, which we should shout about louder than we do. And I think the council's getting into that mindset.
Good.
And we've got those terrible, terrible figures.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and that needs to be absolutely addressed.
Well, we'll see in 4 years' time. Mike Hill MP,
all right,
thank you so much for giving your time
no problem.
and talking to the people of Hartlepool. We appreciate it so much, sir.
All right, thank you.